Hey everyone, you're tuned into InfoQuench with Jeff.
And Amy. Join us as we talk about anything.
And everything.
All the stuff that makes life interesting.
So let's get to it. Hey everybody, you're listening to InfoQuench with Jeff.
And Amy.
And this podcast, we're going to be talking about...
awesome book called The 4 Agreements.
The 4 Agreements, written by...
Don Miguel Ruiz.
Written in what year?
1997.
In what's the publishing company?
I don't know. Talk about a quiz. You know what's interesting is when I had looked up, I bought this book. You bought this book for me, actually.
I buy you all your books, baby.
I know you do. You listen to what I'm looking for, and then you pick it up when you see it, and it's great. You bought me. I read this book a few months ago, and I've been meaning to do a podcast about it. And I actually saw a post from the mayor of our city. Don Darling had done several posts on the 4 Agreements. It's a book that he loves, and so it reminded me that I wanted to do a podcast episode around it. And it is a classic. 20 plus years it's been around, and
20 plus years.
Just as an aside, Don
and hasn't added to the agreements at all or anything like that. It's just always been 4 after 20 years.
No,
That's
actually,
amazing.
he did come out with more. Don Miguel Ruiz. I should mention, when I talk about the mayor of our city, we proudly host our podcast out of St. John, which is a beautiful, awesome city in the province of New Brunswick in Canada. So, I don't know where you're listening from, but if you're ever in our neck of the woods post-pandemic, come visit St. John, New Brunswick.
Absolutely.
The author's name is Don Miguel Ruiz, and I didn't know this. I learned this in researching this episode. Do you understand what the meaning of Don is in Mexican? In the Mexican culture, I guess, isn't
it the patriarch of a family?
Well, I guess it's more when I saw Don Miguel, I thought Don was his first name.
Oh. But
it's not. It's like a prefix. So it's sort of similar to like Mr. or Mrs., which would be Señor or Señora, as it would be in Spanish. That's how you would say it.
Yeah.
But if you were to hear somebody called Don in Mexico, in Spanish, Don is more of a term of respect, and it's used with the first name or the full name. So you would be either Don Jeff or Don Jeff McLennan, but you'd never be Don McLennan, the way Mr. is used.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So, long story short, the author is Miguel Ruiz, but the full title is Don Miguel Ruiz because of that term of respect, that prefix of respect. So, just a little added, something I learned in researching it, because I saw 2 different names for the author, and I thought, is his name Don or what?
So how did you hear about this book? Was it the mayor, Don Darling, was reading it?
I think he had posted about it, and I think I heard it referenced in a few different places. But sometimes things just come on your radar, and it's like when you learn a new word and all of a sudden you hear them everywhere. It was sort of like that with this book.
Okay.
Even with Man's Search for Meaning, which we did, if you were interested in that book, we did a series, 3-part series of episodes not too long ago. So be sure to scroll back in our catalog to find those.
For such a small book, we got 3-part series out of it. That's amazing.
I know. Well, some of these small books, they can pack a lot of meaning into it. And this book, too, is also relatively short, only a little over 100 pages. So it's a very quick read.
So you knew what to expect going into this book to a degree. You knew it was going to be a life-affirming read.
Well, yes, I'd hoped it would be.
Okay.
So what it is so when you look at sort of the definition of this book, it's described as revealing the source of self-limiting beliefs that rob us of joy and create needless suffering. And it's based on ancient Toltec wisdom. So it's said to offer a powerful code of conduct that can rapidly transform our lives to a new experience of freedom, true happiness, and love. So, a lot of lofty promises in
all
that.
All positivity, though. You can't fault anybody for that.
Well, and I always love these types of books. They just get you thinking about how you can live a better life, how you can be more meaningful in your own life, and how you can be more meaningful to those around you. So as mentioned, published in 1997, it's sold around 10 million copies already in the U.S. It's been translated into 46 languages, so a very well-known, well-circulated book.
Yeah.
Just a little around the author. He was born in rural Mexico, youngest of 13 kids, and he actually did an Oprah magazine interview.
Oh, all right.
So
did you read it?
I did. And he claimed that his book was based on wisdom he learned from his elders in Mexico, and he felt it could change lives, and that it had changed his own. So the Toltecs, when we talk about ancient Toltec wisdom, they were artists and spiritual seekers who thrived in Mexico hundreds of years ago. And before they were forced to hide their ancestral wisdom from the European conquerors. So they kind of is considered to be like this wisdom that was sort of hidden away and now is brought back to the forefront.
And rightfully so.
And the author's grandfather and mother both practiced Toltec healing and teaching. So, if I recall from the book, his grandfather was a shaman. But Ruiz himself, the author, rejected the tradition. He went to medical school because he wanted to become a surgeon. But in his final year of school, he got into a really bad car accident. And luckily was physically unscathed, but emotionally he would never be the same. And that's what he calls, an out-of-body experience that transformed his worldview. And that's when he sought his grandfather's guidance.
Okay.
And that's sort of where this book
back
came
in
from.
Time.
So years later, he distilled this Toltec teaching that he learned from his grandfather into this book, The Four Agreements. And the basic premise of which is that most of the drama and suffering in our lives is self-created.
Self-created.
And we can learn to live another way. We can learn to live without that level of suffering.
I'm realizing that every book that we cover in any of these podcasts, you're the only one that has read them. I'm just realizing.
You mean between the two of us?
Between the two of us. Between all those people.
I often try to get you to read these books, but you have your own interests.
I don't. Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much what it boils down to. That's pretty. You know what? I could probably read one of these books and it would just completely alter my cosmology. Who knows?
Well, I mean, even Man's Search for Meaning to me was a life-changing book, and I'd hoped that you would read it, but
I will read it. I will read it. I don't even.
But that's okay.
Is it around?
Because the idea is that even with these podcast episodes, so I understand life is busy. We don't all have time to go out and
big time.
Buy a book and spend the time to read it. So hopefully we give you a little bit of the Coles Notes, the highlights, and you can take something away from the podcast episodes, and that'll help create a little more meaning in your own life.
It's very, very certain that these podcasts, when we cover these books, is not like a substitute for actually reading the book. Read the book. We're not going to tell you everything that's in the book, but we'll cover.
No, but I think we'll give you enough highlights that even if you don't have a chance to read the book, you can still learn some great stuff from the episode.
So, what is the first element?
So refusing. So just to kind of finish off, when he did that interview, his thinking behind the book was, one of the major premises is by refusing to buy into everything we've been taught about who we are, how the world works, and how we must react. And by making 4 simple pacts with ourselves, we can become dramatically happier regardless of our external circumstances.
Do you exercise these 4 things now?
I do.
All of them? All 4? You don't skip any?
I try to do them all.
I'm fascinated to find out what they are.
See,
learn more about my wife here.
You don't even know what they are.
I have no idea.
Can you guess how many there are?
I'm interested.
Based on the title?
I'm guessing 4.
There are 4 agreements. The first one is to be impeccable with your word. So
okay.
I'm going to give you a little summary of what that means according to the book, and then we'll discuss.
Can I just interject just for a second?
Okay, sure. Tell me what's your interpretation of what that would be.
Well, I mean, for example, when you're seeing somebody that you haven't seen in a long time or whatever, and just as you have a great conversation, just as you're about to leave, you say something like, "Yeah, we should get together soon sometime," or I'll give you a call in the next couple of weeks or something like that. But it's just one of those formalities sometimes that people say, this lip service thing, and nobody really actually. Well, I shouldn't say nobody does it, but 9 times out of 10, people don't. They say they're going to, but they just don't.
Well, yeah, it's almost like a pause, like a have a great weekend, without really thinking about.
Whereas if we were true to our word, if we said that we were going to do something, then we would most certainly do it.
So that's definitely part of it. So the idea of speaking with integrity, holding true to what we say and following through. That's definitely a huge part about the first agreement of being impeccable with your word. Another is to say only what you mean. Avoid using words to speak against yourself or to gossip about others.
Oh, yeah.
And
gossip
then
is so
finally,
common.
use the power of your word in the direction of truth and love. So there's some quotations from the book that I found that just kind of help explain the idea of this first agreement a little bit more. It talks about the domestication of humans. So through this domestication, we learn how to live. So when we're children, we're taught the name of things. Like our parents tell us, this is milk, this is a bottle. Mm-hmm. And day by day, at home and at school and at church, from television, we're told how we should live, what kind of behavior is acceptable. But we also learn how to judge. We judge ourselves, we judge other people, we judge neighbors.
We do.
So we try to train our children, whom we love, much the same way that we were trained, almost like in how we would train a domesticated animal. We kind of have this system of reward and punishment. When they do the right things, when they have good manners, when they show respect, we're like, you're, good boy. Almost the way we would do. I mean, it sounds horrible to compare children to animals, but just the idea of that domestication.
I understand.
Right? And so that becomes ingrained in us as humans. And it's so strong that eventually we don't need anybody to tell us. We just kind of have it ingrained in us. So much so that we have like this negative dialogue that goes on in our mind when we do something we shouldn't do. Or we think is wrong, and we'll have negative self-talk.
Okay, yeah.
So it's the idea that, the word or how we perceive things can have a lot of strength in, our overall emotional mindset and, just how the world is. So Dr. John Johnson did an article in Psychology Today, and he sort of looked at the four agreements. So I found his take on it interesting. So just in looking at his take on the first one, be impeccable with your word, he says that words can create reality. We act on what we tell ourselves is real. So, if we have negative self-talk, we'll tend to believe it. So when we think about what kind of words do we use to describe our reality, do you lie and say hurtful, poisonous things about yourself or others? And to be impeccable with your word is to be truthful and to say things that have a positive influence on yourself and others. So, children are born to be, loving and playful and genuine. But as parents, we teach our children that there are certain standards of behavior and what they need to do to receive love and to avoid criticism.
Are they saying that that's wrong to do? Or
I think it just is. I don't know if it's wrong to do, but I think it's just human reality that's what we do to our kids in a way, right? It's part of civilization that
it's
we
also
teach.
very complex because, there's a lot of talk about words and language, but words are just symbols for much larger things that we can't explain. You know what I mean? Like their words are just, they're not even, they're just ways to signify larger ideas, I guess is what I'm trying to say, So it's hard to really pinpoint an idea with words because words are just like a glimpse of the actual idea.
But they're incredibly, well, they're really powerful in a way that, I'll just go back to another quote from the book. So, by hooking our attention, a word can enter our mind and it can change our whole belief for better or for worse. So an example would be, if you believe that you're stupid, you may have believed this for as long as you can remember.
Yes.
And this agreement can be very tricky. It's causing you to do a lot of things just to ensure that you are stupid. You sort of reinforce that belief of yourself. You may do something and think to yourself, I wish I were smart, but I must be stupid, or I wouldn't have done that.
Yeah. And
the mind goes in 100 different directions, so we could spend days getting hooked by just that one belief in our own stupidity.
So the act of believing sometimes makes things real.
Makes it so.
Yeah.
And then one day someone might hook your attention using the word and let you know that you're not stupid. And you believe what that person says. And then you make a new agreement with yourself. And as a result, you no longer feel or act stupid. It's like a spell is broken just by the power of that word. And I mean, it's like people who believe that they're just not good at math.
Yeah, I'm one of those people.
Right? And I mean, I can talk about from a personal experience. I, for the longest time, had always thought I was not a good public speaker.
Yes.
Not a good presenter. And a few years ago, I participated in a startup competition around, you'd spend over the weekend with other, people who had an entrepreneur mindset, and you just try to brainstorm on different business ideas. And then you would do a presentation to potential investors to get them on board with it. And I have always had in my head since I was a kid that I just was not a great presenter. But I presented on behalf of our team, and we ended up coming in second place amongst, some very, well-seasoned presenters. And with that one event, that one weekend, I changed my mindset and said, I had this self-limiting belief that I'm just not good at presenting. And then I'm like, well, with proper preparation and the right attitude, anybody can accomplish that task and be a great presenter. So another example that was given in the book that really stuck to me was the idea that there's a mother who goes to work and has a really rough day at work and has a splitting headache, a migraine, comes home, and her daughter is running around the house singing.
Yeah.
And the mother's headache just will not subside, and she loses it all of a sudden. Normally a really caring woman, but all of a sudden snaps at her daughter and is just like, shut up, you have an ugly voice, or stop singing, and just snaps at her for
vocalizes that frustration.
And a very much a reflection of what the mother's going through. Mm-hmm. But then all of a sudden that young girl becomes a grown woman who lives her entire lifetime thinking she can't sing, or that she has an ugly voice and doesn't speak up in meetings, or doesn't speak up in a group setting, or has social anxiety.
Words are very, very powerful. They're very, very powerful, and you have to learn to use them wisely. But people, I don't think there's a person alive, listening to this podcast or whatever, that has never said something that they regretted.
Oh, of course. I mean, we are all human. Yeah. I think the idea is just to be aware of
conscientious
of the negative self-talk, and try to focus on being more positive, and being positive also with what you're saying about other people. Because sometimes saying something negative, and we see this in the media, on social media, saying negative things can sometimes make them almost a reality.
Yeah.
So we need to be conscious of that.
Yeah.
The second agreement is, don't take anything personally. I think this one's probably pretty self-explanatory, but what does it mean to you?
I'm not sure, the context they're referring to in the book. Don't take anything personally? How can you not take anything personally?
Well, the idea is don't take what other people do to you personally.
Right.
So, in summary, nothing others do is because of you. What others say and do is a projection of their own reality. And when you're immune to the options and actions of others, then you won't be a victim of needless suffering. Part of that is, each person sees the world in a unique way, and the way that others treat us says more about themselves than it does about us.
That's a real tough one. You'd have to condition yourself not to be affected by what other people say and about you.
I've been working towards this, and it is something you can accomplish.
Yeah.
We've talked about before the idea of a paradigm shift of somebody cutting you off in traffic, and you think, are they just doing that to me personally, or do they have something else going on in their life?
Yeah,
it could be.
They're on the way to the hospital. Who knows, right? That's why they're going so fast. Who knows, right?
Right. Or maybe you're buying your coffee, and the person serving you is in a really bad mood, and they snap at you. But then they also snap at the next person and the person after that.
Yeah.
Is it a reflection on you and how they feel about you, or is it more about what they maybe have going on in their own life?
How do you effectively let that not bother you, though? How do you just let that slide off your back when people are mean to you and speak to you in a very horrible way? How do you do that?
I think it's just always the idea of not always knowing other people's stories, right? Realizing we don't know what other people are going through.
Right.
And giving them the benefit of the doubt. I don't think it's easy. I think that we're ingrained as a species to want to be loved, to be accepted. I mean, as humans, that was, we look back in history, that was part of our survival. If we weren't accepted by the tribe and were able to hunt together and live together, and if you were an outcast, it could be the difference between life or death. So as humans, we by nature have the need to be accepted. So when people are mistreating us or say something negative toward us, we definitely take it personally. But I guess
it's recognizing that people are the way they are. People do say the things they do. People do act the way they act for a particular reason. You may not know that reason, but that reason is out of your control. So why let it bother you?
Well, that's right. You have no idea what their individual life experience has been. That have caused them to form those beliefs.
Yeah, I work with that like firsthand with my work. Like I see that. I see that people are a certain way for a certain reason that I don't really understand, but I know that it's there. And that so you in that way, like just like the example of like somebody rushing, and you think, well, are they going to the hospital? You give them the benefit of the doubt.
Well, your work is a perfect example.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we are working with individuals that can be quite aggressive towards us or negative, but they've been through such exceptional life circumstances. How could we expect them to act any other way?
Yeah.
Now,
there's a really great book, and I'm just going to say this just quickly, called "There's No Such Thing as a Bad Kid." I work at a group home. I work with, I'm a youth care counselor at a group home. Anyways, like there's no such thing as a bad kid, and it's true. There's no bad kids. There's just
products of their environment.
Troubled, and the products of their environment.
So when you look at it and you have a child who's gone through maybe extreme abuse or just a difficult life situation, whatever it may be, and they act violently towards you, do you take it personally?
Absolutely not. You can't.
Right. So it's that same concept, but extending that
exactly.
to all people in the world.
I completely understand it now, like I do. And that's what we talked about earlier about a paradigm shift, right? When you kind of understand something and it shifts something in your ideology,
And the difference, I guess, in your work environment is you're actually privy to know that the individuals are coming from difficult situations, so you know the background.
Yeah.
I guess the idea with this is just to assume that anybody could be coming from such a background, right?
Yeah.
And that how they act towards you is a reflection of that and not of who you are.
Right.
And so not to take that personally.
It's like if someone, like just say, for example, for sake of talking, you're walking down the street and someone punches you right in the mouth. Like, well, you didn't cause that to happen, for one. You were just walking down the street, so it's completely unprovoked. You have no idea why that person, like, are they are they having some mental breakdown? Like, you don't have no idea, but it can still be a horrible experience.
Well, it is, but in that context, you would know very quickly that you're not to blame. But if you had some interaction with that individual, then you might start to wonder whether or not you are to blame and whether you should take things personally. Is it because of who you are? So it's interesting how that can go. I think it's very much just it's something you have to actively work at.
It's empathy. It's empathy for other people's ideas, thoughts, experiences, and not just thinking that you caused something. We live in a universe where anything can happen at any time. You know what I mean? Anyway.
When I look at the third assumption, the third agreement, it's don't make assumptions. So this is the idea to find the courage to ask questions and express what you really want. Communicate with others as clearly as you can to avoid misunderstanding, sadness, drama. And with just this one agreement, it is said you can completely transform your life. So this is an interesting thing when you think about relationships and communication.
Yeah.
And how people react, in a relationship. So in any kind of relationship, and I'll just read this quote from the book, we can make the assumption that others know what we think and that and we don't have to say what we want. They're going to do what we want because they know us so well.
Mind readers.
Right. If they don't do what we want, then we assume that they are just looking to hurt us or, that they knew better and they just decided not to. And we think, how could you do that? You should know. We are making the assumption the other person knows what we want. And a whole lot of drama is created because we make this assumption and then put put even more assumptions
You know,
on top of it.
In all honesty, that is something that you and I got a handle on real quick. Well, actually, I don't even think we needed to get a handle on it. We just communicate, right?
Right. It's all about open communication. Don't assume other people know how you're thinking or feeling, or what you've been through, or, you need to say it. Say the things out loud and don't make the assumptions. So when I go back to Dr. John Johnson, and he sort of talks about, great name, by the way, John Johnson. He talks about the idea of mind reading, and obviously nobody can read minds, and when we try to do that, then we just lead ourselves down a rabbit hole.
What is it about the type of person who expects you to read their minds, though? We've all known somebody like that.
Well, sometimes when you're just in a relationship, you think people should know you so well that they know what your needs are or can understand what you're thinking. We assume a lot in daily life. But, the idea Dr. Johnson says is we should be almost like children and just ask questions, even if it's not out loud, but step back and just try to figure things out and just say, is this person acting this way? For instance, don't take it personally. Is this person acting that way because of me, or or
did I do something? Maybe it's not you though, right?
But I think the way to counteract the negativity around that agreement is around good open communication. And don't assume that somebody did something or said something because of you. There could be underlying factors that came into play that you're just never, going to be aware of.
Yeah.
The final agreement is always do your best. So the idea behind this is your best is going to change from moment to moment. It'll be different when you're healthy as opposed to sick. But under any circumstance, just do your best and you'll avoid self-judgment, self-abuse, and regret. This one I find very interesting because I practice. This is something I've always practiced.
This 4?
This is 4.
Okay.
This is the 4th of the 4
Can you
agreements.
read 4 again, please? Sorry. What is 4? Sorry.
Did you blank out there?
I did. I blanked out.
Always do your best.
I was thinking about... I did not do my best just there then.
No, you did not, sorry. Jeff, in the podcasting experience. Podcasting hosting.
Why don't you read that again? All right, go ahead.
So the idea of always doing your best, and it's, don't leave anything on the table. It's whether you're preparing to go into an interview, whether you're, getting ready for a race.
Just reminded me of something when we were watching some program or whatever, and they did like a press release for their that is going above and beyond. Remember we were watching
for a cover letter.
For a cover letter, because they were trying to get a job doing something, and then they did like a faux press release as their cover letter. It was kind of a brilliant idea. Like that's going above and beyond. You're going to remember that you're going, if you're like trying to hire somebody or. Anyway.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a good example. It's about doing your best in everything you do. If you do that, then you don't have to have any regrets. Mm-hmm. So if you go into a job interview and you do all the preparation and, you do all the research and you're as prepared as you can be going into it, if you walk away from that interview and you don't get the job,
you did everything.
You can know that you did everything you could to make that happen, and it wasn't meant to be for whatever reason. If you don't do the preparation for something, if you're getting ready for a race and you maybe skip on a few of your training runs, or then all of a sudden you leave yourself open to a lot of judgment, a lot of regret. And I think the other piece of this is, the idea of doing your best based on your current circumstances. So understanding there may be times when you're not feeling well. And so your best might be at a lower level than other times in your life. But it's still
your best.
But just do your best in that moment. It's the idea of just not questioning whether there's something more you could have done.
Yeah, don't lament on what could have been done. Just do your best in the moment.
Right. So just to sort of recap the 4 agreements, in case people weren't listening, Jeff.
Who are you? What's going on? Where am I?
The first one was to be impeccable with your word. Number 2 was don't take anything personally. Number 3 is don't make assumptions. And number 4 is to always do your best. And if you want more detail on the 4 agreements, be sure to check out the book, again, Don Miguel Ruiz. And it's a classic, a quick read, so pick it up.
So
or from your library, or
listeners should do your best and try to listen to all of our podcasts, every one of them.
yes.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
Good plug, hon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening.
And remember, you can catch up on past episodes at infoquench.com.
Or just about anywhere else you get your podcasts.
Be sure to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
And help spread the word about InfoQuench.
Till next time.